by the end of this video, you'll know everything you need about cameras in Unreal Engine 5. And then you'll also be able to learn how to move your cameras around, how to track your cameras to an object and have a shot like this. Like, check this out. Wait. Boom. Look at that. Look at how sweet this is. You'll be able to do this right after this video. So let's get to it.
What is up, beautiful people? We are here at chapter 16 and we're going to talk about cameras. Yes, this is one of the most important chapters of our tutorial series because we are going to cover exactly what camera settings we are going to use. We are going to talk about cranes, rig rails. Faraz, why do you like cameras so much?
Well, because this is the first part of this tutorial series where you technically can bring in all of your skills from the real world into 3D. You do not need to know anything extra about these settings if you already know your way around cameras in real life. And come on, it's 2024. You use iPhones. You know what aperture is, right? Or focal length.
No, I don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to go through it all together. Well, one more thing I'd like to say before we begin is that just like the post-process volume, just like lighting, cameras also have to be one of the first things you set up if you're creating a cinematic. If you're creating a game, it doesn't matter. You have to make the entire world. But if you're creating a cinematic, and I'll just use an example right here, and let's say you only need two shots, one which is this and another one which is this angle, then why the hell would you want to go ahead and create all of this at the back? You don't need all this detail, so all of that time is wasted. This is the most important tip. Always set your cameras, your post-process volume early on. You know your shots. Then if you know your shots, then you are only going to create what you need for that final result and not waste time creating everything else that might not end up in the final shot. Now, I'll tell you one more thing. There's a very high chance we won't be even looking at this guy right here or these guys right here because our shots are going to be somewhere here. But for the sake of this course, we've created all of this so that you understand how world creation in Unreal Engine 5 works.
So how do we add a camera to a scene?
Very good question. So just like everything else, we have to go to the top left side, this right here, and we can either bring the place actors panel to the left side and then bring the cameras from there, or just go to cinematic and then look for Cine Camera Actor. So this is basically the camera you're going to use every single time when you want to bring in a new shot into your scene. Cine Camera Actor. Now there's also another one which is Camera Actor, I believe, but don't get it mistaken. There's different kinds of cameras in Unreal Engine 5. I believe they were used for other purposes. The one we're going to use for cinematics is Cine Camera Actor. Drag it, drop it into your scene. I can't see anything right now because I have my overlays disabled. The shortcut for that was G. So G, and now I can see my camera. Hit F to go closer to it. And this is beautiful. It comes in real handy because Unreal Engine always has this mesh like a cine camera that you can use to see where your camera is pointing and where it is in the scene. So once you have your camera selected, Farah, what is this at the bottom right?
This is what your camera will see.
Yes, this is the preview of your camera. So if I were to drag my camera up, I'm actually looking at what the camera is seeing. I'm going to go ahead and hit E, rotate my camera and see
I can see everything now.
Absolutely. So I can go ahead and control my camera without actually being inside the camera. So there are two ways you technically want to go ahead and control your camera. One is by looking from the outside and having the preview on the bottom right and then trying to see where your camera should go and then like hit F, maybe go closer, maybe rotate it if you're trying to look at one of these stormtroopers. Another way to do it is to actually go ahead inside the view of the camera. Now, there are many ways you can do that. Farah, do you remember one of those ways?
One of them is right-click, pilot.
Absolutely. So I can go right-click, so click my camera, or even here in the outliner, both of them work. Right-click, and then there's an option that says Pilot Cine Camera Actor. And then you'll go inside the camera. Now you have these black bars at the top, right? Because depending on the camera settings, the width and height of your sensor is different. So right now, I can just navigate exactly the same way as I did before, and I can go around, but this time around, I actually have my camera. And you know that this is your camera for two reasons. Number one, notice the depth of field. We didn't have blurriness when we were building our scene, but right now we do. So we are in our camera view. Another way you can tell that this is your camera view is looking at the top left. Under your perspective, you have this airplane icon, which says you're piloting your camera. Now, two important buttons on the right side, one of which is to eject, so you're getting out of the pilot mode. So now I have the camera here again. I'm back into the normal navigation mode and I can see the preview. Or if I go back into the pilot, another one is here. So technically, this one is going to toggle showing the exact camera view. If you toggle this off, And if you move and then eject, look at what happens. You've actually moved, but then you're piloting the camera, but you don't have that black bar, the camera settings, if you will. Sometimes it's confusing, but I always like to just keep it on so that I'm not confused. And then I just either eject.
So there was another method Faraz just did. That was the second method beside the pilot, which is going through the perspective, and then you can select the camera.
That's actually my favorite way of piloting the camera. I don't like to go ahead and hit right click. I like to just go to perspective and then go down to place cameras, go to Cine Camera Actor. So we know about perspective, Farah, we know about these orthographic views, but once you add a Cine Camera Actor to your scene, you'll have this extra option down here. So if I were to go ahead and hit Alt, duplicate this 2 times, one more time, duplicate. So I have 3 camera actors. Look at what happens here.
You can go inside each and every one of them.
Absolutely. So I can go to Cine Camera Actor 3 and then right click, move it, eject. I can go to Cine Camera 2, move it here, eject, and now I have 3 cameras placed in 3 different positions, right? So there's, again, multiple ways you can control your cameras. So as long as you work enough times with the cameras, you'll get really buttery smooth when it comes to navigating with the cameras. It's honestly really, really easy. Now I'm gonna go ahead and delete our 2 extra cameras. Let's just stick to 1. Let's now talk about one more option on our viewport, and then we're going to head to the details panel and change some of our camera settings. One thing that you can do is, let's say I have my camera here, and then I want to see what my stormtroopers are doing, go ahead and move them, but still be able to have the preview. The problem is right now, I can see my camera, but then if I go ahead and click on something else, I lose the preview. Farah, do you know what we can do here?
There is a pin button where you can pin your preview here.
Right here, bottom left. If I pin it, then I can move around the scene, go all the way back here, and let's say I want to bring the TIE fighter. I still clicked on this TIE fighter, but I haven't lost my preview. So now I can bring this guy here and exactly see what's happening in my scene. Super duper handy. You can actually go ahead and preview multiple cameras, but just understand one thing. When you have an extra screen, technically you're rendering another scene with a different angle. So that's why our FPS is getting a hit. So make sure your computer can handle having previews. Now we're gonna enable this pin, and now it's time to look at some of the camera settings. Farah,
Let's look at the details panel.
Okay, so we have the camera. We're gonna go inside the camera, and I'm gonna go all the way to one of these guys right here. Okay, cool. So this is a really cool view. There's already a couple of problems. I wanted the stormtroopers to be in focus, but they're not. So again, this is where camera details come in handy. So let's pull this up, and let's take a closer look at what we have. There's a lot of settings. We're only going to cover the ones that you're going to use the most, right? Look at track settings. Basically talks about tracking. So object tracking with your camera. If an object is moving, we're going to talk about that when our object is actually moving. So not now. Let's go to film back. Film back is literally your camera sensor settings. You have some defaults here. The sensor width and height is already chosen based on the lens and the camera that you're choosing. So if you want to go for an IMAX 70, it is going to give the exact width and height for an IMAX 70mm. Now,
can you adjust the height and width?
Absolutely. So if I were to create my own version, I can just go ahead and do that. Now, mind you, Unreal Engine 5 is used for virtual production. In fact, we talked to Felix on our podcast.
Yes.
And Felix worked on The Mandalorian.
Yes, all the Star Wars series on Disney, basically.
Do you remember what he said about cameras?
He mentioned that the cameras exactly replicate the real cameras in life.
There you go. So that means everything here is according to real life. So you can emulate real cameras, which is so sweet. So we're just going to go back to the default, which is 16:9 digital film. This is the one we're going to go for. You can even make this widescreen by going, I'm just going to go for random, like 34. Now it's even more wide. If you want to do that, by all means, go ahead. And then you have lens settings. So lens settings, pretty self-explanatory. If you have universal zoom, okay, I'm going to bring your attention to down here, where we have focal length. Focal length, this is the most common setting that you probably have even on your iPhone. Remember the wide angle lens, the telephoto lens, all of these have to do with your focal length, and the depth of field has to do with your aperture. So these 2 settings right here. So focal length is now on 35, which is pretty standard. You want to go wider, you're going to slide this down, right? This is now a wide angle lens, and then you can go all the way in to have that really nice flat image, which usually is used for portrait shots, right? But this is like way too close, right? 130 focal length is like too much. But I'm going to pull this back to something like 50. And the reason why we talked about universal zoom is because on default, you can control the focal length and aperture, but you can go for some of these settings, let's say a 30mm prime lens 1.4 aperture. If you choose this, prime lens means you cannot change the focal length. So right now the focal length is locked. I cannot change it because by default it's a prime lens, right? And the aperture is at 2.8 right now. It's supposed to be 1.4. Sorry, my bad. It's at 2.8. But you get the point, right? It changes some of your settings based on that. We usually like to go for universal zoom so that we have full control ourselves. So right now you know that focal length is going to be controlling this exact setting. We're going to change it to 50. And Farhad, aperture controls our depth of field. So the lower that number, the more blurriness we can get in our shot and the more focus we can have on a specific object. So let's bring this down to the lowest number, which should be 1.2 because that's our minimum f-stop. So 1.2, let's bring it all the way down and see it's even more blurred now. Now, Farhad, what is the next thing that we got to do with this?
Focus setting?
Yes, right? We got to change where our focus is, and that's under focus settings. So right now it's on manual, which is perfect because we want to manually change it. And we can change our focus settings with these numbers, with this number right here. And in order to see where it is at, we can use the debug focus plane. By hitting this check mark, it's not visible right now because it's way too far, but it spawns a plane with this exact color and tells you exactly where your focus is. So we're going to go ahead and drag this all the way down until we see that plane. There you go. It's visible now. And pay close attention to what happens to our focus. Boom.
Oh.
Do you see that? I'm going to disable the debug and look at how beautiful this... Okay, honestly, we're done with the tutorial series.
Bye.
Like, look at how cool this is. Guys, if you're doing exactly the same thing, you're probably just like, wow, this looks beautiful. And it's real time at the same time, right? Now, Farhad, there's another way we can change the focus, right? Here.
We can select by the eyedropper.
There you go. So you don't have to manually go ahead and change the slider. I'm going to select the eyedropper tool and just select maybe this stormtrooper right here and look at the focus changing. Look at how cool that is. I'm going to move my camera to the right. And this, guys, is exactly the reason why you started this Unreal Engine tutorial series. Because if you were to do this in any other software, well, I don't want to discriminate against all the other softwares, but pretty much a lot of the other softwares. And you wanted to go ahead and navigate around the scene like this with hundreds of stormtroopers, with all of these lights, Farhad,
it wouldn't be possible.
It would be very noisy and it would take a lot of time. So right now we're doing this. And one more thing I wanted to cover really quickly. Farhad, do you see the bokeh at the back?
Yes.
Do you remember the reason why we told everybody, please listen to us? Yes, those emissive lights that we created with JS Placement might not look super great right now, but
look at them now.
Look at them now. Do you see the bokeh that we're getting from those emissive lights? Looks so good. Okay, so what is the next thing that we have to cover? Okay,
Aperture.
Aperture we already covered, right? We did say that if we change, let's say our focus here, of course, if we go ahead and bring up our aperture, basically we'll have we have less focus on the subject. Everything else is going to be less blurry, right? And the depth of field is going to change. So we're going to increase this number and look at what happens to the background.
Oh.
You see that?
Faraz, what is a squeeze factor?
Very good question. So if you hover over squeeze factor, it says squeeze factor for anamorphic lenses. Now, if you're a film maniac, you would probably already know about anamorphic lenses. A lot of people are crazy about them. We need to get one. We don't have an anamorphic lens.
We don't have it. Used in the latest Batman, right?
Yes, it was used in the Batman series. It's used in a lot of movies, but very specifically, I believe Batman used it, and the shots were so nice. With anamorphic lenses, you get this really cool sort of blurry edges to your screen, and then the focus is sort of right in the middle, and then your bokeh effects of the spherical shapes that you see at the back because of our emissive lights turn into an oval shape, right? And so we can actually sort of emulate an anamorphic lens, not exactly to the dot here, but the squeeze factor helps. So let's go ahead and increase the number to 2, and let's see what happens to the bokeh. You see it's now spherical. Do you see that? Do you see the shape? So if I were to go ahead and change my lens and just bump this up to something like 24, okay, just temporarily, I'm not saying this is the lens sensor width and height that you should go for, but if you look closely now, our shot does emulate sort of an anamorphic lens, plus in post in DaVinci, you can go ahead and add some of those blurs in the edges, maybe some chromatic aberration, whatever you think would be right for you to get that anamorphic effect. But the squeeze factor actually gets you one step closer to that anamorphic look.
So Faraz, what if I need help moving my camera. I want to use crane, I want to use rig rail, or I came from the real world filmmaking industry and I'm so used to these tools. How can I use them in Unreal?
Absolutely. So we haven't talked about animation yet because we don't have timelines, but we do have to cover all of the animations with cameras, because then how would you know how to move your cameras? The basic way, of course, is just like anything else. We'll hold the camera and then just move it like so. But if you want to be more precise, as Farhad mentioned, there are tools in Unreal Engine that help you to do that.
Wait a second. We're teaching you guys all of these techniques like modeling and texturing, but frankly, there are faster alternatives like photogrammetry.
That's when you use your phone to take a bunch of photos of a real life object and then turn that object into 3D within minutes and then bring it into Unreal Engine.
So we use Polycam for our photogrammetry, and they actually sponsored this course so that you guys get 30% off their pro plan. We have all of the details and the promo code in the description. Back to the course.
So in order to do that, we're going to go to our add button right here, go to cinematic, and the first one that we're going to use is the camera rig rail. Now, this might be confusing in the very beginning if you've never done 3D, but a camera rig rail works like a Bezier curve if you come from a 3D software. And the first time me and Farhad saw it and heard about it, we tried it and we forgot after a while how it worked. So even if you do, don't worry. Whenever the need for it comes, you're going to probably search for this tutorial again and find out how to use it. But right now we've memorized how it's done. So when you have a camera rig rail, first of all, let's try to create the path for our camera. I want to go ahead and start my camera here, and I'm going to go in a U shape and come back here. And in order to do that, I'm going to place my rig rail in the origin point that I want to begin with, and then I'm going to hit this little white dot to start my shape. So I'm going to hit it. Once it's selected, I will see my gizmo. I can then go ahead and pull my shape, and now this is a curve. But in order to enable the curve, I need to go ahead and add more points to my curve. Right now it's just one point, right from the beginning to the end. I'm going to go ahead and use duplicate, so holding Alt. I'm going to pull on this arrow to the direction that I want, and I'm going to go ahead and extend this rig rail. And then I'll do another pull. This is my custom shape down here because I want it to be a U shape. So I'm going to hold Alt, pull it again to extend it. As you can see, it's creating new points, and it's already created. But Farhad, what's really cool about Bezier curves is that now you have control, full control, using handles. So I'm just going to go ahead and click this point right here. This is one of my points, and I have these two extra handles. So I can, let's say, bring this higher. So right now it's like a roller coaster. And then I can hit this handle, and I can move this to control my shape. I can even rotate on some of the axes. So not actually, sorry, not this one. I can rotate this guy right here, yes. And I can move these handles to create a unique shape for my camera. Now this guy just went below the ground, which is not good. I'm gonna bring this guy up. And just like that, we have created our rig rail. So Farhad, how do we go ahead and actually attach our camera so that it follows the rig rail?
We need to make the camera a child of a rig rail.
So in order to make the camera a child of the rig rail, we have to go to our outliner right here. So let's close all of these drop downs. There's too many. We're going to find our camera, and then we're going to drag it and drop it under the rig rail. So right now, it is connected, but it's not following the exact origin.
You need to reset the location.
Yes, just like the gun to the stormtrooper, we need to reset its location dependent on the rig rail. So go to the camera, make sure the camera is selected. Here, there's some values. Reset both of these values. And you can see it comes to the origin point as long as it's a child of the rig rail. Now I'm going to raise this guy up. I'm going to point it towards the right direction. And then if I go to my rig rail, select it, in the details panel, there's a current position on rail, which is at 0. So if you go ahead and slide it, you'll see that our camera is now following the path of the rig rail perfectly.
Faraz, what if I want the camera to track a single stormtrooper along the way through this rail?
That's a very good question, because right now it looks weird, right?
Yeah.
It's following the path, but it's not controlling its tracking. So in order to do that, we're going to go back to the original setting that we didn't talk about in our camera. So hit our camera, and at look at track settings at the very top, we have an option which says enable look at tracking. That's just to enable it. So let's go ahead and enable that. And now it's facing forward because it doesn't have an object to track. So the option we're looking for is actor to track. And we need to define the object it needs to track. So Farhad, who should we track?
The stormtrooper?
We can, but there's just one issue. If you go ahead and track the Stormtrooper, because if we select them, there's so many of them. I don't even know where the origin point is. I think the camera's going to be confused as to which one to look at. So we're going to fake one of our objects by just bringing something, just any shape, like a sphere, right? This is going to be the object that we're going to track. We're going to raise it up right here, okay? And we're going to make it super small, just like that, like tiny, okay? We can go ahead and even hide this later on, but I'm just going to keep it here so that we know what we're tracking. But later on, we can even hide this. So this is going to be our fake tracker. We're going to rename the sphere to tracker. And then on top of the camera, if you go to the look at track settings, we can either use the eyedropper tool or just search tracker. Once we have it, you can see that it's tracking the object. So let's go ahead.
Track the focus too.
Absolutely. Let me just show you what the tracking looks like, and then we're going to do the focus as well. So I'm going to go to my rig, and then I'm going to use the current position on rail and look at what happens.
Ooh.
That looks beautiful. That looks really cool. That
looks amazing.
All right, this is not cinematic at all. This is not the perfect camera motion. We're just teaching you the ways to use the software. So Farhad asked for focus, right?
Yes.
So we're going to go, because right now the ball is out of focus. Let's first go ahead and really zoom into this. So let's go increase the focal length first and really notice that our focus is off. And for our focus, yes, we can go ahead and set this to manual, right? But the problem is as we move on our track, we're going to change
the focus
because the focus is stuck in one position. So we're going to track it. How do we do that, Farhad?
The eyedropper.
Absolutely. So first, we need to change our focus method from manual to tracking. And then open the drop down of tracking focus. And as Farhad said, this time around, we'll actually use the eyedropper tool and select the sphere, the tracker. And just like that, it's done. Now that the focus is tracking, we can go ahead and click our camera rig rail and pay close attention to what happens here. We're going to go all the way to 1.
Ooh.
And look at that.
Focused and tracked.
Focused and tracked. Now we can go here and this looks perfect. So if you want to go ahead and hide the tracker, you can just go ahead and do it. It's still going to track nonetheless. Beautiful.
Faraz, how can we use the crane tool?
Okay, so we use the camera rig rail. There's another tool that you can use. And just like in real life, it works exactly the same way. We're going to go to cinematics. We're going to bring the camera rig crane.
Ooh.
And Farhad, remind me, how do I attach my camera to this?
Make it the child of crane.
So I'm going to drag it and take it out of the camera rig rail. I'm going to take it to my crane instead.
Reset location and rotation.
Reset location and rotation. Boom, boom. Okay. And guess what? It's already tracking the sphere right from the beginning. So all I have to do is now go ahead to my camera rig crane settings. And then now I have to play with these values: the pitch, the yaw, and the arm length. Let's see what they do. So the pitch does this. Wow. Look at that shot. Do you see it?
Yeah.
The yaw does the rotation.
Wow.
And then the arm length, which is even cooler. I mean, dude, look at the shots we're creating here. It's going to take it higher.
Wow.
So we can go above and beyond and then
there are no
bring
limits within the engine. Oh, look
no
at
limits.
that.
Look at this. Wow.
Wow. In the next chapter, we are going to animate all of this using sequencer. And it's going to be smooth.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I really like to play around with this.
So guys, you learn now how to use the camera, the rig rail, and the crane. And we showed you all the parameters. But the most important part is how we animate this and use it in our timeline. So the next chapter, we are going to talk about sequencer, and we're going to show you how to animate cameras, how to animate objects. This is going to be an amazing chapter.
Farhad, check this out. Look at how cool this looks.
Oh my God. We're going to animate it in the next chapter.
Dude, look at this shot. Dude, you guys can do this now. Congratulations for making it thus far. Guys, we cannot wait to see you in the next video. Until then,
Ciao.
Ciao.